Are you looking for a podcast where you can hear from real people regarding their real dental drama? If so, then you've come to the right place. Join hosts Bethany Petty and Dr. Rena Kuba as we dive into the solutions we've created and the mistakes we've made while managing dental drama. Let's get started.
Hello. I wanted to talk about, I think last episode, we talked a lot about stress and how to handle stress. Again, short of one of us winning the lotto, I, don't have any real like tangible, but I think we gave some advice that was, hopefully helpful, or at least sparked an idea or two of going, hey, I could work on this, or I could tweak that. One of the takeaways, so if you didn't have a chance to listen, that's what we spent last episode talking about. But one of the tips that we had in there was planning the next year out. And then I think even in multiple episodes ago, when you bombarded me in the closet with goal setting and blah, that too was talking about planning. Mm-hmm. And so I want to spend some time today talking about planning. And hopefully this one is kind of a lighter episode. Because to me, when I think about planning and goal setting, I do start going, ugh. But then when I get going, I'm like, actually, that sounds like a lot of fun. Oh, that sounds like a lot of fun too. Or, oh man, I wish it was time for that now. So, I'm hoping, and if you're not a real planner and things like that, maybe just getting something going. So it doesn't have to be super elaborate. And I'll tell you what I'm talking about. But some of the things that I want to make sure that we're doing now, and this is going to sound so stupid, but this is what sparked it for me last week. I'm sitting there up at the front. We had training all day, and we have these magnets. We do these cowboy season, Go Cowboys, America's team, right? We have our magnet of the cowboy season schedule. And I'm up there, and I'm like, there's still a stack of them. And I was like, nobody needs this in December. These should have been pushed out by October at the latest. Like, why are we not actively, because I've got to put all these in the trash now. Season's pretty much over. And I thought, okay, so for next year, I guess I need to actually put an event on Dentrix that says, hand out the magnets, give them to the local schools, like whatever. So we're not just putting them in the trash. And then I thought, okay, then I probably need to make the reminder event for me to order the magnets. And then I need to make the event to remind me, like, we're season ticket holders, like who am I gifting the tickets to and all of that. And I was like, wait, this is all stuff I need to plan for. So when am I doing that? Well, I used to have a person who used to help with marketing, and then it got transferred over to somebody else, and then she left, and then it got transferred to like me and 2 other people this year. And it was okay, but we made it harder on ourselves than we should have. So you and I had a meeting, and I was like, how do we make this easier? And I finally was like, it needs to be this one person who's really good with the details, who's really good with the creative. I can count on her for all of that. Like, maybe I just need to sit and have a meeting with her to plan the schedule for next year from a marketing perspective. But then I'm also adding on stuff like team trainings. Mm-hmm. And like in Texas, the state board wants you to do emergency training once a year. So let's add those events on the schedule. Let's go ahead and look at the schedule. Like, we've got it somewhat planned out, I think, through spring break or April or whatever, 6 months ahead, where what days are we open or not. But maybe we need to look beyond that. Anything that we know is coming up. Do I want to look at CE, continuing education courses that I know are going to be coming up that maybe I want to go for? So in Texas, for example, we've got the Southwest Dental Conference. Mm-hmm. I almost always like to go to that because it's usually a pretty good conference. It's highly cost effective for me. It's in August now, right? Like, yeah. After school starts. So for a pedo practice, that's perfect. I don't have to pay for staff to stay overnight somewhere and fly them out. So we usually try to take advantage of that. I know our TAPD is always going to have a CE class. And so things like that, like anything that I can think of, like, let's go ahead and tackle that and put that on the calendar now too. We like to have Fair Day in the fall. Let's block that. I reached out to a colleague of mine who's only had her practice about a year or so. And I remember the last time she was planning something with her small team. Maybe it was their last year's Christmas party. And so this year I was like, oh, I never did find out what she's doing for this year. So I messaged her, hey, what are you planning for this year? And she was like, I actually forgot. about it this year. And so we're going to do something for New Year's instead. And I just was like, I remember those days. Yeah. I remember that of like not going. And then at the nth hour, fumbling like a fool, trying to figure out what are we doing? What day is available? How much is this going to cost me now? Because I didn't reserve it in advance, right? So it's like a lot of stress. Yeah. Let's go ahead and plan that now. Mm-hmm. Like not the event per se, but like the date that it might be. Yeah. Or if I don't know when it might be, what I've started doing, or we started doing a year or two ago, was like maybe in September, putting an event to say, start thinking about the Christmas party. Yeah. Just so that I have enough time, because if it hasn't occurred to me. So things like that. That's how I wanted to spend some time on this episode going, can we help ourselves not stress out, not forget things? I think about team member anniversaries, and I have been crappy about doing that, because for so long I had a small team, so it wasn't hard to remember people's anniversaries. And for the first 5, 6, 7 years, 4 or 5 years, could I even afford to give them something? It was like, you're lucky you've still got a job and a paycheck, because we still are growing as a practice. Well, my fear now is if I acknowledge somebody's 2-year anniversary, but somebody's been there for 6, and they're like, well, you never acknowledged my 2-year anniversary. Like, that's what I'm afraid of is going to happen. Well, you never. And so now I'm just like, I just play dumb on everybody's anniversary. But I know this generation, especially, who's all like, me. I want to be recognized. How dare she? She didn't recognize that I've worked here for a year. Why am I here for a year? Nobody appreciates me, right? Like, that's the crowd that I feel like we're about to deal with. And I'm like, but I'm going to stay strong in my stance of, I don't remember anybody's anniversaries, because I haven't. Right. All of that to say, I wish I was better. But that would require me to plan. But you know what I mean? Like, and it's not that I would mind planning right now. It's just, I don't know what to do about it, because a lot of my staff have it's too late. Like, I've missed it. And then I don't want to set a precedent when a lot of these people haven't had the precedent. You know what I mean? All of that to say, like, anything you can think of that you think would be strategic to go ahead and put on a calendar.
Now's the time.
Now is the time.
And I love this suggestion, because it comes to me when you're thinking about December. January, we're normally go, right? New year, hit the road running, and that moment of planning almost feels like it has passed at that point. And this month, this time of the month, right before January rolls around, is a perfect time to just think through 2024. So all that you mentioned, I would kind of break into categories. Marketing. Again, if it's too much to plan for the whole year, I always recommend a 1-year marketing calendar. But if you're like, oh my gosh, I've never done that before and I can't, plan the first quarter. What are you going to do from a marketing standpoint? And then in February or March, put an event on the calendar that says get together with whomever, even if it's just you, yourself, and I, and plan for quarter 2. So marketing is something that ideally you would put a whole plan together for the year. Team building. I can't tell you how many times this is like, oh shoot, I didn't even think about this. Or, oh my gosh, it's been half a year. I feel like my team's at each other. I can't stand them. And I'll ask, well, when was the last time that y'all had some fun together? Well, we haven't done anything fun this year. Ugh, it's time. You got to do something. So team building is something that you should always plan out. I love when there's a team building event at least twice a year, but ideally quarterly. I feel like for the most part, every 3 months or so, it's just nice to, even if that's just, we went out to lunch together. It doesn't have to be major. Just plan on something. And if you're thinking about it now, then what's your quarter 1 team building event? What's your quarter 2, quarter 3, quarter 4? Go ahead and just at least pick a date and decide to yourself, I'm going to do it. If you're not good at building out team events, then pick the dates and then harness your creative power on your team. Oh my gosh, Sally is the best party planner. I'm going to tell her the budget and I'm going to let her plan the event. I've got one client that she allows, she does 3 team building events a year, and each department, so the RDAs plan 1, the RDHs plan 1, and then her business team plans 1.
I love that.
Then she shows up, she pays for it, the team loves it. So plan your team building events. Now, even if it's just picking the date and making a plan of who you're going to assign the planning to, you got to build in HR stuff. So when am I doing my performance reviews? Am I doing compensation reviews? Those need to occur ideally separately. And when? When am I going to put them on the schedule? Am I having, outside of that, any additional HR things like anniversaries? Okay, what am I doing for my team member anniversaries? Do I do anything for their birthdays? What am I doing for their birthdays? Do I know when their birthdays are? That may be too much. Tag in your team member, Sweet Sally, that loves to party plan. Can you figure out everybody's birthday? And then I'll figure out what I'm going to do with it at that point. So HR stuff, you need to put it on the calendar. And again, I can tell even as I'm saying it, you're like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. Just bare bones. It doesn't have to be all the details. Just know, okay, performance reviews. I want to do that. May is kind of a slow time before the crazy summer hits. May's my time. That's when I'm going to do performance reviews. I'll have time for it. Which means compensation reviews will be in the fall. October's a nice slow month. I will have had several months from the performance reviews where I gave them things that I wanted them to improve upon. It'll be great to sit down with them in October, see how they did on those improvements, and did they earn themselves a raise. It literally can be that simple. You don't have to have, here's what I'm going to do in the performance review, and here's all the questions I'm going to ask, and blah, blah. Just put it on the calendar. And then you know when it's going to happen. And then I would say the last thing would be continuing education / your own development. And that doesn't always, when I say development, I'm not talking about just CE. I'm talking about professionally. What do you need to be doing to develop yourself, to develop your practice, so on and so forth. So those, to me, are the 4 main categories.
Like, I even put things on there like my DEA renewal. I knew that was going to be up this year. So it was nice to kind of have that heads up in November that it was going to be expiring in December. I always put my license. Like, haven't we all been there where we're crunch time sweating? Is my license going to come through on time? Like, and finally I got so tired of that. I was like, I can't. I've got to put myself in a far enough notice so that I know it's coming, and because I'll forget. I'll just forget. Jurisprudence in Texas, you have to take that every 4 years, or maybe it's 5 now, maybe it's 3. I can't remember exactly. I'm not committing that number to head, but I'm going to go in my head, but I'm going to put it in the calendar a few months before it's due so I don't forget to do that. So things like that I think are just super important. And then in our last episode, we talked about taking breaks for the doctor so that you don't get burnout. And like maybe that's your time too to say, hey, I know that, you know, I always get stressed after spring break. I'm always just beat because spring break is so busy in a pedo practice. And then 3 weeks after spring break are useless. And so maybe that's the time that we're going to do our medical emergency training, and we're going to, you know, catch up on our spring cleaning. We're going to go through and scrub down the office. We're going to whatever. That's the day I'm going to take off. I'm going to be out of the office that day so that I can go and sit at the Jade Waters pool and sit in the lazy river all day because I need some rejuvenation time. So just thinking about those kinds of things, and I think getting it on the calendar is so super helpful.
It is.
Or like if you do birthdays, because I remember I used to do birthdays. I don't anymore, but when I did, and you're like, oh, you know, I love Sally, and so I know Sally's birthday's coming up, and then you're like, oh, fudge. Amy's is, you know, the next week. I don't know, think about Amy.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's the worst.
That's the worst
The
feeling.
day after you missed it and you just did Sally's. Like, what a jackass, right? Like, that talk about World War III in your office. You want to let your staff quit? That's a good way of doing it. But that is so much stress.
Yeah.
And so, or even, you know, like for referring offices. There's certain offices that we want to make sure we remember these doctors' birthdays. I mean, years went by where I never had it in the calendar, and then I was scrambling at the nth hour. Like, it's so dumb. And yet you'd think, like, I'd learn. Finally, I did now. We're like, oh, and actually, we almost missed one this year. And I was like, for some reason, I have a feeling like his birthday, something's coming up. Like, he's on my mind. We called his office. I think my office manager knew his office manager, and she's like, yeah, it's like 4 days from now. I'm like, oh, for the love of God, can you imagine if I had this thought 5 days from now?
Yeah.
Like, opportunity missed. We could still send something, but I look like an ass now.
Yeah.
So, but we were scrambling, and I don't like to scramble. Mm-hmm. So I think this is super helpful, especially like you said. Of course, this, we're mid-December now. It's not going to happen this year, but January, when we all have a minute to catch our breath, that second week of January, maybe taking some time out there. And then if you are good at this, great. But I would suggest take 1 or 2 people on your team that can kind of remind you of things maybe that you've done in the past that you may want to do again. I kind of bring our old marketing calendars to the meetings so that I'm like, wait, we did that 2 years ago. Why didn't we do it last year? Oh, yeah, we didn't because of this. Or we didn't do it because we missed it. Or we didn't, here we've got a Dallas Child magazine. And every year they do a mom approved. Like one patient has to put your name in, right? Like it's nothing. But it's something that patients think of, oh, she's mom approved. Anybody's mom approved. Patients don't know that.
It just takes one singular mom.
Right, to say that. Well, I remember one year we got something that was like, hey, you're the only one for this number of consecutive years to have gotten it all these consecutive years. And of course, then the next year we missed it. Well, why did we miss it? Because we had a staff change. And so our streak was broken. But to me, I'm like, if we had just put it in the schedule, put it in Dentrix, that in March, we need to watch for that. In February, that in March, that's when voting happens. Mm-hmm. Hey, Sally, did you get all the flyers ready to post on the thing? Do you have our social media post ready to announce this? Did we do all of that so that we're better prepared? And that we're utilizing, quote, free marketing, posting on Facebook, but that requires thinking ahead of time. I remember, for PEDO, National Children's Dental Health Month is February. I would lose my mind when the staff would come to me second week of January and go, okay, what are we doing next month? Mm. But the buck stopped with me. That's my fault for not saying it sooner. I was more irritated with myself for not thinking of it. I mean, it's not like the month changes. It's always been that month. It was that month when I was a dental student. Like it was always February. So it's not like it's new, but I just would forget about it. And so there's so much going on. And now I'm like, there's no way I can order that many toothbrushes in time. There's no way that I can.
Yeah.
Or I can, but I have to do expedited shipping. So I'm spending more. So now I'm like, no. Now when we know September's slow. We know November's slow because in our office, at least, that's our pattern where the beginning of November is kind of empty because everybody's waiting for Thanksgiving break. Mm-hmm. And then after Thanksgiving break and Christmas break, we're kind of slow. Well, I don't want to send staff home all the time. So let's figure out when we're expecting our lulls to come such that maybe that's the timing to get all these, team trainings on.
Right.
And what does your own state board require? Well, maybe that's the time to knock some of the OSHA out, knock out some of the HIPAA, knock out the medical emergency stuff. And
I feel like even as we're sitting here talking, it applies so much to our last episode on stress. Because, man, you talk about something hitting you where, oh gosh, I got to get this solved this week. And now any plans that I had for this week, every amount of extra attention is being diverted to avert this crisis. And that's stress inducing. So if we can get out ahead of that and really think through all those categories and what we need to do, even just that alone, knowing that you've built a safety net in of, well, and I wanted to mention this, you mentioned, putting notes on the calendar. So I think we've got to figure out what works for us. If the schedule is where everything, all of our reminders kind of live and die, then yes, once you've got your plan laid out, you go through and you just create those events on the calendar so that you yourself don't forget them. Maybe you have a team member that you have said, it is your responsibility to make sure that I see the reminders that say my name on them. I know it's on the schedule, but please hold me accountable and make sure that I see that.
We've got that for payroll. I forget payroll every 2 weeks. So we've got, and there's an event. And it happened not too long ago. I want to say it was this summer. And I think whoever was supposed to send me the email didn't send the email or didn't send me whatever they were supposed to send me. Well, she was in the office. She saw it. No, ma'am. Like, that's the fail-safe is that you're supposed to. So now my office manager set up an automated email that I get every 2 weeks. It's like, don't forget to submit payroll.
Yep.
Thank you, God.
Yes. And I love that you've mentioned including team members in this, because honestly, that is one way to actually, people love a project. And especially if you assign these projects carefully, if you've got somebody that really does live for party planning and she gets to be the one that is working with her team to create your team building events, and you've given her a budget and you said, run with it, I'm happy to do whatever you want to do, then she's got this personal satisfaction that she's getting to plan the parties for your team. If you've got your type A manager that's like, oh, she'll always forget payroll, and so I'm going to set up this super efficient automated email that goes out to her, and she gets satisfaction knowing that she did that. Like, this is an opportunity for you to get stuff done with your team that doesn't necessarily involve you, and they get excited about the projects that are being passed to them, but that takes planning. That can't happen last minute, because last minute you need it to be the most efficient, effective thing, and that's probably going to mean a plan that you have to come up with. You've got to, rapid fire the instructions to your team members to go do this, go do this, go do this, and that's not exciting for anybody. So if you get out ahead of it, you have the ability to make it rewarding for your team as well.
And I don't know what the naysayers are going to say, because I was the naysayer at one point. Like, what if that person leaves? Or what if that person, whatever? But you've got to start somewhere. And maybe they're not going to leave because you trust them with this. And now they have some ownership and some accountability and some interest, some vested interest in it. It was really sweet to see. We, every year we do Secret Santa at our Christmas party. And the one RDA that plans it, like, she loves planning it. I've never asked her to. One year somehow I must have said something like, hey, are we still doing Secret Santa this year? Do you want to? And she's like, yeah, I can take ownership of it. Okay. Like, for me, it's like, how hard should it be? Just like, I could cut up slips of paper with people's names on it, pull a name and call it a day, right? She takes so much ownership. Like, if you could have seen the sheet she made this year, and yes, I guess part of me could say, why did you take time on the clock? But she may not have done it on the clock. I don't know. It was super cute. And it had like this whole section of, what do you like? What do you not like? Mm-hmm. And I like that too. Because a lot of times I'm like, well, this person liked this. Or, when I get 10 lotions and 10 candles, I hate all lotions and I hate all candles. And I've got 10 of each. You know what I mean? Like, somebody wasted their money. I wish I could have just gotten a pencil. I would have preferred a pencil to this candle, right? And so I think it's just like super helpful. And she put on there like, what are your favorite shops? What are your favorite drinks? What's your favorite candy? So not only do we have some help as the shopper for somebody that you may not know very well on the team, but then like getting to know everybody is just that going, oh, really? Like, you like gummy nerds?
Yeah.
Who likes those? Nobody. You're the one person who buys those. That's why they're making them, right? So like, it's just a fun thing to do from that perspective. Anyway, so she's always our person to do that. And so she did it. I didn't have to tell her. She got it going. She got it. She's the one who went around, let everybody pull their slips, sent out the reminders, like, to everybody, like, don't forget to bring your Secret Santa gift. Everybody, don't forget, this is coming up in a week. I had to do nothing.
Exactly.
So we get to the party, and now I'm thinking, oh, shoot. Like, I normally cut up numbers that you draw to say what order we're going in or whatever. I was like, I didn't do anything. Like, it was off my radar because it's not my task or not my project anymore. It didn't matter. When it was time and we were like, okay, should we do Secret Santa now? And I'm thinking, okay, how are we doing? Like, I'm starting to, in the moment, go, oh, shoot. Look, like, how do we do this again? Like, what am I? And as I'm sitting there, like, in my head, I look up and she has stood up in front of everybody. And she's not our most chatty, she's not the take ownership, I'm the boss personality in the practice by any stretch of the imagination. So it was really beautiful to watch her just stand up and go, okay, guys, we're about to do Secret Santa, and this is how this is going to work. We're going to blah, blah, blah. And she had a whole system.
Yeah.
And off she went. It was so precious. It was so fun. And it was so easy for me. Yes. I had to do nothing. And It was fantastic.
Isn't that great? I think you just mentioned, are we doing Secret Santa? That person said, I want to do it. They applied so much more creativity than you would have had the time or energy or mental strength to do. And it was probably very satisfying for that person. And therefore, you've got a great Secret Santa event out of it. Like, that is the beauty of thinking about what we want for next year from a planning standpoint, and then tagging in people that we think will really take this project and run with it. And it's truly win-win. You didn't have to think about Secret Santa one time, and that person got personally satisfied planning the Secret Santa event. And another win, your team got to experience a fun event where they got to know each other and it didn't require Dr. Kuba to step in and do anything.
Yeah.
That's...
We had several things throughout the year that, somebody was like, why don't we raise funds for this? Why don't we do a toothbrush, guessing contest? Why don't we do this week? We'll do superhero dress up week. And I'm just like, oh my God, I don't have time for all that to sit and process all of that. But if you want to do it, you carry it out. Now, that means you've got to come up with the logistics. Like, don't come to me and say, well, what pants do you want me to wear? I'm not going to tell you that. You need to think about all of that. You need to think about the social media post. You need to think about what kind of notice. Like, you can't just say, hey guys, tomorrow wear your Wonder Woman shirt. Like, nobody's got a Wonder Woman shirt at home. You do, but nobody else does, right? So you've got to plan this in advance. And I think it's really fun watching the team because a lot of times they've not thought about all these logistics. They've not thought about what it takes to make that into fruition. And so I think just all of that, or even down to, again, when for in a pedo office, school's back in session, those last 2 weeks of August, we're sitting there doing nothing. Mm-hmm. It is really painful to send people home. They are stressed. But I'm like, okay, then where were you guys in helping plan this to make sure that that doesn't happen again? Because there's so much stuff that could be done, and now it's too late. Like, help me plan this. So I've got a meeting this week with a person that we're going to talk about all of these things, and even down to what are we doing like now in January when we have slow time coming up? What are we doing with people? What are the things we've been meaning to catch up on?
Yeah.
Whether it be webinars or cleaning out the supply closet or whatever it is. What are we doing and who's doing it?
Yeah.
So that way we're a well-oiled machine rather than fumbling at the nth hour all the time.
And spread out those different categories of things that need to be accomplished according to what your practice trends. Like, don't plan things at a time when you know it's going to be balls to the wall with patients. Like, plan it during these little lulls, and then don't plan everything all at the same time. Like, don't put... In February, you've got a team building event, you've got all your performance reviews, we got to do our CPR training, but like, you're going to burn yourself out in February because you put everything that needed to happen in that month. Plan it out accordingly to where the stress of all of that is spread out through the year, and then base it on your practices schedule as well. And then I would say, too, find the best method of reminding yourself. So maybe that's the practice schedule. I myself love the calendar on my phone because it sends me reminders. I've got it set up to actually ping me reminders. And so maybe your phone calendar works best. Maybe you're a pen and paper type person and you need to buy you a good paper calendar where you can flip it open and see that. You find out the strategy.
The only thing I don't like about the other two strategies, for me in particular, because I am trying to tie other people into it with me. So if it's on my personal calendar and then it's not on my manager's calendar, or it's on a calendar she never looks at, because that's happened to us before. I'm like, it's on the calendar, and she's like, huh? Right? So for me, that's why we ended up doing it on Dentrix, because somebody should be seeing that in our daily schedule. Now you go, okay, well, now there's 10 events. So now nobody's seeing any of these events. There's too many events on there. So we do have to be careful about that. Yeah. But all of that to say, like, preparation will definitely be a major source of relief. Yeah. One thing we talked about in the last episode was, if you are planning on taking time off, and you're going to be gone, you've got a wedding in the family in March, and you always work spring break, but this time you can't. Or normally your busy season's like the beginning of June, but this year your niece is graduating and you've got to fly to Nebraska, or whatever it is, right? And you're going, how do I make sure that, because if you're gone and the office is shut down, then what are you doing with your staff? And now you lose your staff, right? So all of those kinds of things, like, you may or may not know about your niece's wedding in this fall, but the ones that you do know that you're going to need time for. My question to you was, because you had mentioned docs that you've worked with that were needing like all the school holidays off with their kids. And my husband was on me about that this morning. He's like, there's going to be times where you're just going to have to. You're just going to have to. And I didn't say anything, but I'm just like, that is such a stressful thing for you to say to me, because then when our paychecks are less, then I'm going to hear about it then. When my staff is bitching at me or quits on me because I don't have the number of hours they needed, that's going to come down on me. But you're right. We need to keep family happy, the kids, the in-laws, my parents, everybody happy. So let me just be gone all these peak times that I could really earn. But when's the other shoe going to drop? You know what I mean? And so what you were saying was these docs that you knew had these goals, you helped them figure out what they needed to do with the rest of their time to make sure that that time out of the office wasn't a killer. And my question to you was, how do you do that if you don't have a Bethany helping you mastermind that? Because I think for me, at least, that's too much.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard enough being gone, and now to go, okay, well, now I've got to then figure out what I need to make on these days and how many hours. And I'm just like, oh my God, that is extremely overwhelming. Some people are great at it. You've probably got plenty of docs that are like, nope, I'm going to shave off here and I'm going to add to there and it's all fine. But I think a lot of us are not good at that.
I would say most at least need a sounding board.
Yeah.
Even if they come up with a plan, they need somebody to run it past to go, hey, poke holes in this. Is there anything that I'm missing? So even if you are good at problem solving that, you still probably need to run your ideas past, even down to what am I doing with my staff if I'm out, to prevent them going and temping somewhere else, and then now they've loved that office and that office tried to steal them and now I'm down an employee. So just thinking through all the nuances of that plan, I think, is really important.
So you're going to come back and give us an episode on some things to think about on how you could recoup the time, production, whatever it may be.
Yep.
Okay.
So in the meantime, for this episode, I would say, I know planning can be overwhelming. Some people are going to be like, I love this idea of planning the whole next year, and they're going to be right on it. But I would say if that's not your natural default, our encouragement is think through as far as you possibly can next year without it totally, spazzing your brain out, and make a plan for marketing, HR items, continuing education, professional development, team building. Just start putting
And
that
I would
all
say a lot
together.
of people, probably the team building is not like, I love that. That's my favorite one. I can't wait to tackle that. But for a lot of people, they're like, "Bleh." So start with the ones that are easy. And to me, the easy ones are CE requirements. Like that, we are told what we need. So do you have it or do you not? And if you don't, there you go. When does your license expire? When does your CPR expire? Like those are easy places to start because that's like objective, definitive, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And then I would say looking at like we in our office too, and sometimes we don't have this information available, but like the school calendars. So in Texas, when is STAR testing? Well, we know we're going to be slow then. So those are times that we always like to have on our schedule because then we are anticipating slow, and therefore that gives us the heads up to say we know we're going to be slow. We might not need the temp doc. We might not need the temp assistant. We might not need, like you can plan better with that. The other one, the HR one you said, like that's a good time to go, okay, well, I'm just going to, I always say I'm going to get down to having these meetings with my team. And it always just passes by. I'm always too busy. You're going to make time. So that's easy. You need to do that. What we've been talking about, low doctor stress and making sure you take some you time, build some of those in. Maybe, every quarter, every 2 months, every month, maybe you're taking off, Friday early. Maybe you're taking off Thursday early once a month, once every 2 months, whatever it is, to give you time to go sit and stare at the wall.
Yeah.
And then maybe back into your marketing and your team building if those are harder for you to do.
Yeah. I think that's a really smart suggestion because then it's like you feel some satisfaction having planned the quote unquote easy things, and then you're moving on to the ones that are going to take a little bit more mental power. I think that's really smart. So get your categories down, what you want to start with. Pick the medium through which you're going to put those. Is that the practice calendar? Is that the practice calendar and a paper calendar that you have that you like to carry around? Figure out where you're going to put these events. Figure out the people that you can potentially tag in on some of those to help you with those tasks. And then it's just start planning, right?
I think that sounds good. I personally feel like that makes me feel like I've accomplished something and I have greatly reduced my stress already. Like even now, for the Christmas party. Well, we tend to do ours at the beginning of December. But what if we don't? And this year I had to move it because we went out of town, whatever. But regardless, like for me, I put an event in September. Like I'm going to go, we're having this meeting on Friday, but after that, I'm going to go ahead and put it in for next year. In September, start planning the Christmas party.
That's right.
I do a Valentine's dinner. So I had in my calendar at the beginning of November, start planning the Valentine's dinner. So just stuff like that, again, I don't have any idea what I'm going to do, but at least it's on my radar and I don't forget it.
And it's not hanging out on your mental plate.
Nope.
I think if we haven't planned it, then we've got all these things that just tick, tick, tick in our mind, and we can't move it off the plate because we haven't put it somewhere to remind us. So I think by planning it, our mental plate becomes lighter because you're like, no, I've got it on the practice calendar. I've got my phone that's going to ding me in November to remind me. I don't have to think about that until the practice calendar says to, or until my phone dings me.
I find that so incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
It's like a mental load literally off. Like I just punted that away and I'll come back to it, but I don't have to remember to try to go, wait, I was supposed to remember to do something. It's there. The reminder will be there and it is off my list now.
I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining the conversation today. We hope that you are comforted in knowing that you are not alone, but we also hope that you're walking away with some really great tips and tricks to try in your practice. We value your feedback, so please take a few moments to rate and review the podcast. Finally, we want to make sure that we're covering the topics that matter to you. So track us down on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and let us know what topics you want us to cover. As always, please know that we are rooting for you today as you manage your dental drama.